If you're new to my podcast, let me do a quick introduction to who I am. My name is Andrea Donsky. I'm a menopause educator and nutritionist for more than 20 years, and I'm a published menopause researcher and the co-founder of wearemorphus.com, a company that helps to empower women over the age of 35 who are in perimenopause and menopause with nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and research. Today I'm speaking with Leslie Kenny, an Oxford-based CEO and patient advocate. When faced with life-altering diagnoses in her late 30s, with lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and Hashimoto's thyroiditis, she was told she had 5 years left and would never have children. Leslie refused to accept this fate. Through eliminating inflammatory triggers and supporting her body's natural healing, she transformed her health, becoming autoimmune disease-free and naturally conceiving at 43. Now, at 59, she has a biological age of 21. Empowered by her journey, Leslie founded Oxford Healthspan and launched Spermidine, a food-derived spermidine supplement after discovering the compound's anti-aging potential. Spermidine activates autophagy and targets key aging pathways, earning its nickname the anti-aging vitamin. Leslie also co-founded a nonprofit organization called Oxford Longevity Project, alongside Oxford University's scientists and doctors. Both are part of Leslie's mission to educate the public on improving health span and longevity through actionable methods. Now, here's Leslie. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Leslie.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrea.
So I would love you to share your story. I mean, when I read it in the bio, honestly, it's incredible how you were able to heal yourself. And I would love you to take us through it because it's so inspirational that I think it'll help a lot of women to hear how and what you've done.
Sure, happy to share. My story really begins at age 39, so that's 21 years ago. And I, like most women in their late 30s who had put their career first and delayed making a family, found myself after 5 years of really trying to conceive a baby the natural way. I found myself in the middle of my 5th round of IVF. And I had come to the hard decision, for me anyway, to use donor eggs. And I'd gone through the process of finding a donor that was mixed race like me. So I'm half Taiwanese, half Irish, German, American, typical American mutt. And the closest I could come was a girl who was half Italian American, half South Korean. I was all ready to go for this 5th round of IVF with donor eggs, and there were high stakes. And just as we were in the middle of the cycle, I noticed pain in my hands. Turning doorknobs, I would notice this real pain trying to turn the faucet on and off using scissors. Even typing emails, I just noticed this sharp, searing pain. And I knew that was wrong, so I went to the doctor, but to be honest, I didn't think anything of it because my mind was so focused on getting a baby. Really, that was just my single-minded goal. And I was rather surprised when my doctor called me and gave me my blood test results. Normally it's a nurse, and the nurse says, just want to tell you there's nothing wrong. And in this case, my doctor called and said, hey, your results are in. Can you come into the office so we can talk about them? And I'm thinking, I have been spending a lot of time in doctors' offices, mostly fertility doctors' offices, and now I'm going in for something else. Okay, deep breath. Let's go and find out what this is about. And she told me that I had rheumatoid arthritis. And I said, okay, thank you. What do I do? And she said, well, the solution to stop any further destruction in your hands and your joints is to suppress your immune system. And we're going to do it by having you inject yourself with these immunosuppressing drugs. And the nurse will teach you how to do it. You'll get them shipped on a regular subscription. You won't have to think about it. It's just going to become part of your routine. And I said, oh, well, is there anything else I can do? Should I change my lifestyle in any way? And she said, no, there's really nothing you can do, but you should definitely avoid large social gatherings and parties, cinemas, definitely anything with small children because they harbor disease. And your immune system is going to be greatly weakened while you're on these new drugs. So that was my lifestyle recommendation,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
Not, eat better or sleep better or move. It was avoid people.
Oh my gosh.
And kind of sounds a little bit like COVID. And I said, okay, didn't really know what to think, but okay. And then, as I'm thinking, I want to have a baby. Is this going to be a problem? Like, what about that? She then moves on and says, now you also have lupus. And I said, I don't know what that is. And she said, well, your immune system is trying to destroy your organs and tissues. It's not just your joints. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound good. I think I need my organs and tissues. and and I said, okay, well, what's the solution for that? And she said, well, unfortunately, we don't have anything to manage or cure it. So you should just expect things to get worse.
Wow.
And yeah, exactly. Wow. And I thought,
Wow.
well, wait a second, hang on.
Wow.
I'm, I'm the customer here. And I'm paying you, and you have a lot of expertise, and you're the one with the medical school diplomas, and I need you to fix this. You can't tell me it's going to get worse. And I know that that sounds like a very entitled consumer response, but I do think that as a patient, you can either accept what the doctor tells you, or you can kind of fight back, right? Disagree. And I was really disagreeing because I had this high stakes, donor egg embryo transfer coming up. And I really was thinking, okay, if I'm injecting myself, is that going to change my outcome with this IVF round? And she needs to fix this, right? She looked at me though, and I'm sure she was sympathetic, but she just shook her head and said, I wouldn't do the IVF.
Hmm.
Even if you're successful, you've only got a good 5 years left. And yeah, that's kind of a
Like
showstopper.
left to live, left to like conceive, like
That's what, I mean, I was gobsmacked at that
oh
point.
my
I was sort of,
gosh.
well, what, okay, wait a second. I've been fighting back, but she's sort of like big door slam,
Oh
right?
my
This is
gosh.
like,
But
this is
oh,
like we're closing the
oh,
lid on this topic. When
oh
a
my
doctor
gosh.
says that to you, I don't know, I was in complete shock. I just thought, what does, I didn't know what to think. What about the
Awful.
embryo transfer, right? And I'm already trying to get my head wrapped around injecting myself. And if you've never done it before, it's sort of, that sounds a little violent. I'm sure that if you're a diabetic and you're very used to it, it's nothing, but it's something that you have to get your head around. So there's already that. There are already these lifestyle changes. They're already, I'm thinking, how does this impact the IVF round? And then she's telling me, don't even bother. Well, of course, I'd already paid for it because that's how IVF
Mm,
clinics work. Everything is up front.
right.
And so I was still going to roll the dice. But I left that meeting with my doctor and
Oh
just
gosh.
thought, she may say that there's absolutely nothing that I can do, but it only stands to reason that if I'm not smoking, drinking, eating, really bad fried food, and I'm taking care of myself, that I ought to have a better outcome than a patient who is not taking good care of themselves. So
Right.
why don't I try to do whatever I can to be the best patient possible and meet her halfway? So that was my goal, was to simply meet her halfway, and maybe then she, as the expert, would be able to come up with a cure. And so, like most patients, especially IVF patients, we spend a lot of time on the patient bulletin boards. I went to the lupus and rheumatoid arthritis patient bulletin boards, and I learned some interesting things. One was that the immune suppressants that I was supposed to be injecting myself with tended to only work for around 18 months. And then they stopped. Like from one week to the next, they just failed. And your doctor would put you on a kind of merry-go-round of immune suppressing drugs until eventually you were put on methotrexate, which is a cancer drug. And exactly. And if you're on a cancer drug, this particular cancer drug, it's a bit like Accutane, where it's not great for your ovaries. So you've got to go off of it for 6 months in order to try to conceive safely. And so I'm thinking, okay, this doesn't seem like there's an end in sight. And you're kind of on a hamster wheel of drug after drug after drug. And then on the lupus boards, patients were talking excitedly about a German study that had been conducted in 2000, so 4 years before I was diagnosed. And it was just 13 lupus patients, but they had been given a transfusion therapy called intravenous immunoglobulin, or IVIG. And this is basically antibodies from anywhere from 3 to 10,000 people. And it's meant for patients who can't produce antibodies. But what they learned was that it actually modulated the immune system of people who were overreacting and attacking their bodies.
Interesting.
In other words, it seemed to reset the immune systems of these autoimmune patients, in particular these lupus patients. And in the study, every single patient improved, which was totally different from what my doctor was telling me.
Right.
So I did, like most patients who were engaged, I sent her the information. I said, could I please have this? She said, no, there's no evidence. I then looked for a doctor who could do this, and I found him in San Francisco. And he prescribed 2 rounds for me. I went to a hospital in Denver, got these 4-hour transfusions done. And at the same time, I just thought, okay, if the IVIG is resetting my immune system, I need to make sure that I don't trigger it after it's reset. Right. I have to be very careful. So I look to identify anything that might be causing chronic inflammation. Diet was the first place I looked. And I did an allergy test. Like a lot of people who are listening who've probably done this, I discovered gluten, dairy, eggs were a big problem for me. Cut them all out. Was super careful, avoided sugar as well. And then added in things like omega-3 fatty acids and olive oil that would help, right? And then I looked at other things that could be a source of inflammation, like lack of movement, poor sleep, even toxic relationships and past trauma. I did trauma therapy, and I had an unresolved conversation I needed to have with my father, who had died also at age 39, and wrote those letters, burned them. It's largely ceremonial. But it serves a purpose. And I think that humans are highly, ceremony matters to us, right? And
100%.
so it was really something that enabled me to say goodbye and to let go. Did all of those things. I even did Mayan uterine massage. Like, honestly, I was open to everything and anything.
Why not try it, right? If it, what's the worst that can happen? It wouldn't work. But if the upside is it does, right?
Exactly. And in fact, when I went back about 6 months later to just do a routine checkup, went into my doctor's office. She comes in with my folder under her arm, sits down, opens the file, and says, deadpan, well, look at that. You don't have lupus or RA.
And that's all she said. Did she ask?
Yeah.
And did she ask you what you did?
No, of course not. And I said, Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh.
gosh.
I was like, excuse me, could you say that again? And she said, your TNF alpha, your cytokines have all returned to normal. I'm like,
Oh my
do
God.
you want to know what I did? That is amazing. But do you want to know what I did? I think all of us patients get so excited because we feel like we've discovered something. And
Right.
we want to share because we know how gutting it is to get these diagnoses. And of course, for me, it couldn't have happened at a worse time. So her reaction when I said, do you want to know, was, no, that's okay. And she didn't even look up at me.
Oh
It
my
was like
God.
she was
I
just
think,
kind of looking at the numbers.
that to me is, it's like, that's so disappointing, right? Because, and I know exactly, and I hear it all the time from women in our community that, or even it's happened to me. I mean, like, do you want to hear what I did? And it's like, there's no interest there. But I'm like, that's where it's like going outside of their realm of practice as opposed to just doing, medications, crucial, super important, all of that. But also nutrition plays a role. Like
Yeah.
lifestyle plays a role. All of it plays a role. So it's a matter of why not find out so then she could recommend it to other patients who have
Yeah.
similar
Yeah. Yeah.
conditions.
Exactly, exactly. But I think that they must get this on the regular, right? And they don't have time for a life story version, right? They need something that's evidence backed. And I had shown her the study out of Germany, but it was small. It was 13 people. Now, to a doctor, that's not enough evidence. It's not statistically significant. To a lupus patient who's told you have 5 years, that's significant.
I was just going to say, what was the alternative? There's nothing. She said
Yeah,
there was nothing she could
yeah,
do for you. So the
yeah,
13
yeah,
people
yeah,
is
yeah,
something, right? So yeah,
yeah.
I hear you for sure.
It's funny because I consulted immunologists in both the US and the UK where I now live. And one British immunologist said, oh, stay away from it. You have no idea if there are prions in there that might cause mad cow disease or if there's hepatitis C, because again, this is 2004. Not only did we not have a cure for lupus or treatment, we didn't know how to really cure hep C.
Right.
And I was thinking, I hear what you're saying, but honestly, if I'm going to die of something anyway, I'd rather die trying to cure
Mm,
myself, right?
totally. Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's, that is basically the story. And while the IVF round did not succeed, I ended up adopting a little girl from China who is now 20 and just passed her driver's exam today.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And then at age 43, I did successfully, without any intervention at all, deliver a healthy baby girl who is about to turn 17.
Amazing. Wow, what a story. I mean, it's such a story of inspiration because when you're told that there is nothing that can be done and you're like, I'm going to show you what I could do and I'm going to
Yeah,
actually change it.
exactly. Exactly. So my overarching goal for the last 21 years has just been to keep the inflammation down.
Yeah.
And the other good news bit of the story is that when I did my glycan age test at age 59, my biological age came back at age 21.
Wow.
And that is, yeah,
Incredible.
exactly. And it only goes to 20. So I have room for improvement by a year.
Right
But
here.
but I think that all of us, we kind of know intuitively that yes, we have a chronological age, which
Mhm.
corresponds with the birthday candles on our cake, but we also have a biological age. I went back to my high school reunion, my 40th, a couple of years ago, and we were all wearing pictures of what we look like in high school because we all changed so
That
much. It
is
was
such
like,
a good idea. Oh
yeah,
my gosh. I had several reunions, but that is such a good idea to put what you look
yeah,
like on your
right,
picture,
right,
on your shirt.
because you remember
Right,
right, you
exactly.
remember what they look like when they were
A
like
great
17 or
idea.
18. Yeah, but that's the thing is that we all change and people change shape, people change hair color, their skin
Their
changes.
styles,
And
especially back then.
yeah, of course. Yeah, it was definitely for me flippy out Farrah Fawcett type
Oh my
hairdos.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
That's hilarious. So you wore your shirt and then people were like, you didn't change?
Well, there were a few of us where people like, wow, you look the same. You look
Oh,
the same. Like obviously you have gotten older, but and I think that's the thing is that there were definitely people where I was like, okay, let me take a look at your picture on your lanyard. So I can just see, I was like, oh yeah, we had biology together. Or we had social studies together, a driver's ed or something. So yeah, but so we do have these different ages. And what's
wow.
amazing is that now there are studies, lots of scientific studies, including studies on research conducted here at the University of Oxford, and I'm based in Oxford, England, showing that we can actually slow the pace at which we age and
Mm.
even reverse that biological age. So there are 12 levers, and I don't know if you've talked about these before, but they're called the hallmarks of aging. And people will be familiar with some of them, like stem cell dysfunction, because we're always told to put stem cells on our face, mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation, gut dysbiosis, things like that.
Yeah.
And we actually, they're like levers, and we can really push on those levers by changing our lifestyle and incorporating certain practices and foods with compounds that have some pretty magical effects.
Yeah, no, totally. And I haven't really spoken about the 12 levers before, but so are you able to go through, like, are you able to just say what I know you just said, I think 4 or 5 of them. Can you,
Yeah.
are you able to say what the
Yeah,
12 are?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sure, sure, sure. So the initially there were nine, and they start with epigenetic changes, impaired protein folding. So I always say that's kind of like it's like folding origami swans, and if you don't fold it properly, it just looks like a messed up, scrunched up piece of paper. I mentioned mitochondrial dysfunction, stem cell dysfunction, impaired intercellular communication,
Hmm.
telomere shortening.
Yep.
And let's see, DNA protection, altered nutrient sensing, cell senescence. So those are the
Hmm.
zombie cells
Yep.
that actually leak inflammatory compounds. And then the new three are impaired autophagy or cell renewal, inflammation, and gut dysbiosis.
Interesting.
So those are the 12. And there have been some interesting papers where they've really looked at the targets the compounds to target that you could find in food that will actually inhibit those hallmarks. And that I think is super exciting.
So how did you come across Spermidine? Like, can you tell us a little bit, and then obviously creating your company, Primadine,
Yeah, sure. So
or your brand?
probably, yeah, in 2019, I was here in Oxford, and I had met so many incredible scientists at this school playground while picking up my kids,
Yeah.
and all of them were doing such fascinating research. But I'd say, oh, so how do I get a hold of that? Or I've got a friend who could benefit from that. Which clinic can they go to get that? And everybody would say, oh, no, 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 it's not available. I'm just research. And I was like, well, why don't you start a company? Oh, no, 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 I don't want to do that. I have to publish. And, I just, after a while, I thought, I'm just going to hold up my hand and volunteer to help these people. So I started fundraising for some of the Oxford University spinouts, but I only wanted to do regenerative medicine. And
Right.
these were really the orphaned companies here, because pharmaceutical companies, there's a well-trodden path from the university straight to the pharmaceutical company for their pipeline. And I didn't want to do that. So while I was fundraising for these regenerative medicine companies that were looking at stem cells and uh, all sorts of interesting things like that, I was told about some work in rheumatology. So the head of the biotech investment portfolio at the biggest fund here in Oxford, investment fund, said, you're a rheumatoid arthritis patient. You should really meet these people over at the Kennedy Institute for Rheumatology, because
Wow.
they're working on some interesting research, and I think you'd find it fascinating. So I went to meet Professor Katja Simon, an immunologist, and now Professor Gada Al-Saleh, a rheumatologist and pharmacist. And they were working on spermidine, and they could show that if they gave spermidine to elderly mice, that the immune cells of the elderly mice would rejuvenate. And I think all of us know that if an older relative gets pneumonia or COVID, that is way worse than if a young person gets it,
Yeah.
right? The survival statistics aren't great. And so what they were showing was that actually it was almost like the immune cells of these elderly people had amnesia. And you gave them spermidine, and
Wow.
that amnesia lifted. They suddenly knew how
What to
to
do?
properly identify pathogens.
Wow.
Exactly. And they had the proper antibody response. So I got very excited about this. And in this meeting with these two academics, and then with the guy who was in charge of the biotech portfolio, I said, you know what? I'm sold. In addition to renaming this Primadine and please not Spermidine, I'm happy to start a company to bring this out to people. And he said, I said, will you invest in it? And he said, oh, no, we can't do that. And I was like, well, why not? It's a great idea. It's got merit. And he said, well, there's no patent. It's in food. It's
Mm.
pointless. And I was thinking that is such a terrible reason not to bring something to
To
people.
market, yeah, to
Right?
help people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, because
But okay.
you're thinking like an entrepreneur, like a businesswoman, right?
Well,
And a
but
researcher, both. You got both.
actually I'm thinking like a patient. And this is,
Mm. Good point.
why do we gatekeep this
Right.
information?
Yeah.
If this can benefit people, why do we say it has no merit unless it is a synthetic chemical that can have a patent to
Love
put
that,
a
Leslie.
patent mode around it?
Love
That I
that.
think is wrong. And in the same way that it was a disservice to me that my own doctor did not know about this intravenous immunoglobulin, we're going to make patients wait and suffer? Like, no, I refuse. I
Yeah.
just refuse. And it's way too personal for me. I am not going to shut
So what
up.
did you, so obviously, so when they said no and you're like, yes, so how did
Yeah.
it go from
Well,
there?
I started bootstrapping it. I literally was like, I'm
Wow.
going to look for the highest food source of this, and I'm going to see if I can get it down into a teeny tiny capsule, but from
Oh,
food. And it's kind of like trying to take the goodness from you know, from a food and get it into capsule form so that people can take it
right.
easily. And because of the fact that spermidine's magic lies in its ability to activate autophagy.
Hmm.
That's a process of cell renewal, and it was the subject of the 2016 Nobel Prize in Medicine. That research was conducted in Japan. And I thought, the Japanese are the longest lived people on the planet. The Nobel Prize in autophagy was granted to a Japanese scientist. I'm going to see if they happen to have this in Japan. And I
Yeah.
found it. I found
Oh,
it there.
wow.
And so then
So cool.
I found the raw material there. I saw that I could, that I could actually get it into tiny capsules. It, in fact, actually tastes good just as a powder because it's from a highly concentrated wheat germ. So it's got kind of a nutty taste to it.
Interesting.
And I found a manufacturer in the United States who could encapsulate and bottle it for me. And then COVID hit.
Uh,
Yeah. And I remember in April of 2020 calling Professor Katja Simon and saying, I don't know if this is a good time to start a new company and get a product out there because all the retail shops are closed or
yeah.
people aren't really going like they used to. And she said, no, we need this. We have nothing else. This might actually help people. You have to bring this to market.
Mm.
So maybe I'm, a very obedient student and I listen to my teachers, but I thought, okay, Katja's really smart. I'll do what she says. And I went ahead and here we are 5 years later, and we have a gluten-free version, which is actually from a unique kind of chlorella that we get from Okinawa, Japan.
Amazing.
And Spermidine, Primadine has won a lot of awards, but I think
Incredible.
that the best accolade was from the New York Post, who called it the Swiss Army knife of longevity because it inhibits
Wow.
9 of those 12 hallmarks of aging.
Wow. Oh
So
my God.
that's why it's a Swiss Army knife.
From one product. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So if you want to think about touching all those levers, then spermidine will get you further than
Wow.
really anything else from food.
And it's one, like, how do you like talk about how we take it? So obviously you purchase it in capsule form and then
Yeah. Or
it is
powder
food
form.
or powder form
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
is food. So you could take it with food, without food, how many capsules a day,
Yeah.
tell us how to
Yeah.
actually take it so that
Yeah.
it optimizes.
Well, first of all, I want to say I really want to encourage everybody, again, as a patient advocate, I really want everybody to try to get this from food sources
Mhm.
first. I'm a
Yep.
food first kind of person. So please try and get it from legumes, peas, mushrooms, and the mushroom type matters. So it would be shiitake and oyster would be the highest sources. Fermented soybean. There's a Japanese dish called natto that has a high
Yeah.
concentration. You might find it in Oriental markets where you are. And so those are some of the places you can get it. You can also get it in long fermented cheeses. So for the cheesemakers of the Cheddar Valley here in England, shout out to them, cheddar cheese, but British cheddar cheese, not like the short fermented American stuff. That doesn't work. You need something really properly long fermented and mature. But if you want to get it in your diet and you want to get the minimum effective doses that have been shown to improve, for instance, memory and cognition in older people over 90 days, then you could take a supplement and you want to get a food-derived supplement. And again, the reason it matters is because in food, we have a lot of co-occurring enzymes and cofactors that really potentiate how it works, but also these are three-dimensional compounds that our body receptors recognize. And you'll have spermidine in every cell in the body. And it's like vitamin C. It's not fat soluble, so it's water soluble. We will get rid of it on the daily. We need to replenish it.
Yep.
I will just say that the gut biome can make it throughout our lives, assuming we're eating fiber and we haven't been subject to lots of broad spectrum antibiotics. But otherwise, we're really reliant on getting it from plants. And so with our supplements, you can take the highly concentrated wheat germ form with the prebiotic fiber to feed the gut bugs that make more spermidine for you. You can mix that into a smoothie. You can sprinkle it on your porridge in the morning. You can put it on your acai bowl. Same thing, we've got a gluten-free version, and right now you can use a mortar and pestle if you want to break that up or throw it into your blender, your Vitamix, to blend it up. Or you can just swallow them like supplements. I do know people have a lot of supplement and pill fatigue, especially the older we get if we're on prescription meds. And so we do have one version in powder, the wheat germ version we have in powder right now. It does taste good, people tell
You just
me.
add it to whatever it is that you're eating.
Yeah.
You know what's so interesting? When you told me your age, I'm like, you're 60? Like you honestly, like I could see like you do not like what does it even look? I guess what does age even look like anymore? But
Yeah.
I thought you were younger than me. So it's like incredible. So and that's where the anti-aging or pro-aging or however you want to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's where that comes in, I guess, in terms of like
Yeah.
it's working at the cellular level.
It works at the cellular level, and these are the building blocks for everything from, your heart, brain, liver, kidneys, but also your hair, skin, and nails. And so while you have all of this stuff, this good stuff happening on the inside, which
Wow.
you might not see because, we're not like cars with a dashboard that tells us where our oil is, or our engine fluid. We will be able to see some changes on the outside, and hair, skin, and nails are the big ones, but also sleep. So if you have a sleep tracking device, you should be able to see better sleep there. People often notice changes to their hair, and basically in the corners of your forehead, When we're little, if you look at little kids, they've always got these little baby hairs at their
Mm,
forehead, right? And
yeah.
they're really so cute. But as we get older, we lose those. Well, that's new hair growth. And people notice that new hair growth begins again. And that's because spermidine puts the hair follicle back into the growth phase of the
Mm,
hair life cycle.
amazing.
That also happens to be the only time that melanogenesis or pigment production happens. So some people notice their hair color returning. So we had a woman who's 60 send us pictures the other day, and we'll have to put those up on social media. She's been taking it for over a year. And she suddenly noticed that her hair color was changing at the root. So it took her several months before she kind of noticed this, that it was darker from the top down. So white on the bottom and dark at the top.
Wow.
And she
Unbelievable.
said, she's like, I don't want to jinx it, but you can share my photos anonymously.
That's
but we have had that before. We had another woman who was 79. Same thing happened. So she had kind of, blonde brown hair. That happened to her. Another place is eyelashes. And, some women put on fake eyelashes on the top, but it's not so easy to do it on your lower lids.
mm,
Well, spermidine helps with that. And you don't have the worry about getting melasma that you do if you're using one of these eye serums. Sometimes that's a side effect.
wow.
Um,
Well, hair
Skin and
loss is
nails
such a
too.
big thing too for us in perimenopause and menopause. So
Yeah.
that's incredible that if it helps with hair growth, that's
It
incredible.
helps with hair growth, helps with it increases keratin, so it helps with the integrity of the hair. So a lot of
Yes, it makes
times
it a
as
little
we
bit
get older,
stronger.
we get this, yeah, and we sometimes get those little frizzy hairs that
Yeah, a lot of
come.
us will get frizzy hair changes.
Exactly. So changes to the way it looks, but that also
Incredible.
then has an impact on
Wow.
whether or not it accepts hair dye.
Wow.
So some women who were older said, actually, the integrity of my hair when I go in to get it dyed, it's taking better now.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow. That's amazing. And I know that there's also, which is exciting, you had some new research on cancer. So can you
yeah,
share that as well?
sure. So this is really exciting. And there are many studies, but there are a lot of scientists, but the scientist who's co-authored some of these papers is the 2018 Nobel Prize winner in medicine for his work on how cancer tumors grow. His
Wow.
name is Tsuko Hanjo, and he's from
Hmm.
Kyoto University. And so he actually had a study in his lab where he took elderly mice whose bodies were riddled with tumors and gave them spermidine. Why did he give them spermidine? Well, I talked about immune function at the very beginning of this interview, and we need immune function not just to fight off pneumonia or COVID. We need it to properly surveil for cancer, as well as properly identify self tissue from non self tissue. But cancer, why do more cases of cancer tend to happen in older people? It's because their immune systems are not properly identifying it and going
Right.
after it, because cancer is always present in the body. So that paper, that study out of the Hanjo lab, now there are several other papers looking at it, but there was a new one out of China on
Mm,
how spermidine potentiates anti-tumor immune responses and immunotherapy sensitivity in breast cancer. So that literally just came out.
incredible.
And I've been very reluctant to talk about that until this came out. But again, it was really, if this is a support to women who are going through this, then I want them to be able to take this paper and show it to their consulting oncologist. Again, just having a diagnosis of anything changes your sense of identity and you feel powerless. And this somehow changes that power dynamic because it feels like, wow, there are things I can do
Mm-hmm.
to strengthen my immune system again.
And I think that's the key is to not feel powerless, right? To be like
Yeah,
you were like, I'm not going to be powerless. I'm going to do something about it. And I think
yeah,
that's important. Can you send me the link to that
Yeah.
paper. And then what I'll
Yeah.
do is I will put the link in the show notes. And
Yeah.
then that way, for any of you who are listening and who want to read the research, print it out, bring it to your doctor, it'll be accessible in their show notes. So you don't have to go
Perfect.
looking for it anywhere else. We'll have
Yep.
it right here, which is amazing. Leslie, is there anything else? I mean, all of this is, I mean, to be honest, I'm just listening to your story and I love how research focused you are and kind of it's all about the data, it's all about the science. And I love that you took something that showed like this incredible benefit and you're like, I'm going to make a product out of it because,
Yeah.
and I also like how you framed it of like, because my mind goes right to like being an entrepreneur and research. And you're like, it's for like, because of the patient, I wanted to help someone like yourself and other people. And I just love that frame of mind and that thinking. And it's so needed. So thank you what you've done. Is there anything
Thank
that we
you.
haven't touched upon that you want to share with our audience before we end the interview?
Do you know their spermidine is so amazing for hormones as well that hormones and sleep, we don't really have time to go into it, but there was a great Canadian study with a wheat germ derived spermidine and had amazing results over just a short 30-day period. And some of the benefits included reduced urinary incontinence, increased estradiol by like 37%, decreased cortisol by 50%, and men increased testosterone by just under 50%, increased DHEA and pregnenolone, the
Oh,
precursor
wow.
hormones to all the reproductive hormones,
Wow.
in both men and women. And that I think is really exciting and could be helpful to, to your listeners who are going through
Mm.
perimenopause or menopause. And again, I think for women who want to get pregnant, who are worried, like I was, oh, I've left it too late. We had a client get pregnant at age 47.
Wow.
And she had been on Primatine GF for about 3 months when she fell pregnant. She wasn't trying. She and her husband had said, it's not on the cards for us. And that I think is, she's not the only one. We have had a number of Primatine babies. And I think that's really exciting. But please always start food first because your body needs the fiber. Your gut biome needs the fiber. This is a supplement. So please look at cleaning up diet and then adding this on like a cherry.
Always food first,
Yeah.
always nutrition first, and then,
Yeah.
yeah, because we can't out supplement good nutrition. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. And I know that we have a code Morphus20 if you want to try Primadine. We'll put that in the link below, which is 20% off, which is very generous. So thank you for that for our listeners. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. And thank you for being on our show. Thank you for sharing, your story. I'm so happy to hear that you're great, you're healthy, and you also did the work. And I think kudos to you for that because you did what was necessary to reverse and to heal yourself. And it takes work. Like I don't want to just minimize the
Yeah.
fact that, you spent, like you were saying before, like you've done all the things, especially with your food and your nutrition and your lifestyle, like all of it. And it's not easy to do. So,
Yeah. Look under every rock. But you know what? I know doctors might say, oh, it's too hard to do that. But we've got a lot to live for. I mean, I feel that at 60, I'm just kind of hitting my stride. I don't know how you feel about this, but this is like the best time of life for me. And I got a lot of work to do. And I think all your listeners do as well. So
yeah,
it's worth putting in the work. It's an investment in the future.
I love it. Thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you, Andrea.
Can you just tell also, sorry, before we go, how people can get in touch with you and
Oh,
and
sure.
Oxford Health?
Sure. So you can follow me at Leslie's New Prime. So like the new prime of life. So it's LESLIES, New Prime. That's on Instagram. I'm mostly active there. I'm also co-founder of a nonprofit called the Oxford Longevity Project. That's just oxfordlongevityproject.org. We're also on Instagram. And then for Primadine, go to Oxford Health Span, like the span of a bridge, and you'll find us there again on Instagram.
I love it. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Leslie as much as I did. I put links to everything below, to the research as well as to their website. Remember to use the code Morphus20, MORPHUS 20 to purchase Spermidine. That's 20% off your purchase. If you enjoyed today's interview, please share it, because the more you share shows you care. And please take a moment to leave a review and to rate our podcast so that we can get this information out to more women in perimenopause and menopause and their partners. Thank you for spending the last little bit with me. I know there's a lot you could be doing, but instead you chose to spend your time with me. And for that, I am grateful. I'll see you at the next interview.